This is Maurice from CBS Sports Radio, and I have an honored guest with me, ladies and gentlemen. It is NFL Pro Football Hall of Famer, the original shutdown corner, a premier defensive back, often described as dynamic and durable, and now he has the honor of having his name to represent the nation's #1 defensive back for HBCUs. This is Mr. Aeneas Williams. Hello, sir. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. Just want everyone to know here in Oklahoma City, just being here, sleeping here, just the environment and the brick town and just all of that. I'm so honored to be here with the Oklahoma Sports Hall of Fame, as well as the PAYCOM Jim Thorpe Award committee that made this happen.
Talk to me for a few minutes, if you will, how that conversation went down when they were called and you were first asked about this opportunity.
Well, first, it's almost like we've been having so much happen in our country. George Floyd and just a lot of different things happening. And attending a HBCU, the Southern University, I like to affectionately say, when I got the call, it was so humbling. It was truly an honor. And Roy Williams was one of the gentlemen that actually reached out to me, and just sharing that distinction. And I've always known about Jim Thorpe. I mean, I always knew who won the award all the way back from college. And then I got a chance to know a little more of the history of Jim Thorpe and the accolades and just his spirit and character. And then to be selected, the first thing you're thinking, man, they're probably other guys that have played HBCU that may be defensive backs that are probably better than me. So I just was humbled by my wife Tracy and I, our family. And once he told me the backdrop, but now the first inaugural awardee, when I get a chance to meet him, to let them know that it's just not on the field. Academically, Southern prepared me for on and off the field. My dad went to Southern, my brother went to Southern. And just when I get a chance to see them, and even when I'm gone and my daughters and my son are carrying on the legacy, I want them to know it wasn't just about football, but this relationship with Jesus Christ, and being honored that people would think about people of color and allowing a defensive back, those HBCU kids, to be recognized at the same banquet. So it's not like it's going to be a side banquet. That's what I'm excited about.
There's a lot to break up there, so for a few seconds, let me start with something that you said. Roy Williams, he said, he was quoted as saying he was looking for the right person and the person with character. How does that make you feel to be recognized in that sentence with Mr. Jim Thorpe, as you just said?
Well, it goes back to Roy and the entire committee, not just looking for guys who have talent and who did well at HBCUs or played well in the NFL. It really boils down, because it could be anyone if it's just on the field. But to have somebody that even knew about the type of character I do have, and that the Lord will put on their heart to actually identify me in concert with the perfect fit for this award. Not that others were not warranted on and off the field, but just honored that I was selected to represent this award.
What do you hope the impact of this award, not just the first go around, but years to come for HBCUs? HBCUs often are not recognized. They're not given the accolade opportunities as so many other awards. What is your hope for this award and what impact it might have?
Maurice, another tangible way of expressing the heart of this country. The heart of this country going back, even though flawed people, even though we've had slavery, even though we've dealt with civil rights, and even some of the things we deal with now. At the heart of it, no matter what's happening, there's still people trying to get on lifeboats, get on makeshift boats to get here. And for now, whoever's in influential positions, to have the boldness, because not everybody's probably not excited about this, but there's some people who are influential enough to know it's important to recognize Jim Thorpe, Native Americans. It's important to recognize people of color and let people that look like them. It's like what I'll talk about today. It's the impossible. And one thing God says, he says, with God, all things are possible. So when people, humans, take God, God poured out, but when he moves on humans, And they exercised the boldness to understand there's something here. And now with this award being acknowledged, and when that young man from HBCU is standing there, when they see those tuxedos and they see all the prestige, and it's not a step down award, it will now generate enthusiasm and hope for younger people where they understand throughout this country the contributions, Native Americans, the contribution, African Americans, and the contribution of our Caucasian brothers and sisters.
This couldn't come at a better time. You mentioned the nation and the stories from George Floyd and many others. There's many stories. We don't have time to talk about them all.
Right.
But right now, the HBCUs are getting a lot of publicity right now. The timing of instituting this award, how do you feel about that?
Well, once again, timing has a lot to do with it. And that timing, it could have been done maybe 20 years ago. But this the time. And I really want to say to everybody that it's time out, okay? Yes, we see division in our country. But God has saw fit for each of us to be in this generation. And he gives us the perspective from heaven that anything is possible. So the first thing we have to start seeing is not what, oh, that should have already been done. We should be rejoicing that it's done. And we should now parlay this into recognizing other different institutions that makes America great. When you go back to old kingdoms, kings derived their greatest glory when the least, how they treated the least in their kingdoms. And in this country, to recognize HBCUs, I'm in Maurice, I'm in every Hall of Fame except one. And that is the College Football Hall of Fame. And at some point, I'll reach out, or at least have somebody reach out to encourage them to look back. I was Black College All-American twice. And I was MVP, defensive MVP of Black colleges. So the NCAA College Hall of Fame should go back and look at these guys. And a lot of times, there are some guys from smaller schools that are voted into the College Football Hall of Fame. But usually they were from great teams that got the recognition. One thing John Madden, the late John Madden, told my father when he saw him at the Pro Football Hall of Fame, he said, "Mr. Williams, you need to know something. Aeneas' induction into this Pro Football Hall of Fame, it's unique." And my dad said, "What do you mean?" He says, a lot of these guys, even though they merited it, they came from winning teams. And those winning teams, when they were playing, were on national TV a lot. Your son played predominantly his first 10 years on losing teams. And he said that get that distinction and get that call, that's different. And that's what I want the College Hall of Fame to recognize. Go back, look at these All-Americans. You're talking about 20 interceptions in 2.5 years when a guy walked on his junior year. And it's not about that, but it's just a reminder. I'm so excited. Right here in Oklahoma, right, while Native Americans were at one time in the land taken. And for Jim Thorpe to be recognized, and for me to learn even more about his impact on not just Native Americans, but on this country, I'm excited to meet everyone coming to this banquet and just tell them thank you.
Your strength is resonating. Your power and your inner strength that comes from your faith is definitely on display. And I can sense the power within you. Mm-hmm. The question I would like to ask is, the legacy of love that HBCUs started you with has prepared you for the moment. Could you talk about the step that if it was not for Southern, if it wasn't for that environment, that you might not be the athlete you have been and become and the honored athlete that you are?
No doubt. When I first started, I wasn't recruited coming out of high school. My dad's the first college graduate on both sides of the family. And he started a education lineage, if I would say it that way. So when I wasn't recruited, I'm the youngest of two boys. We didn't celebrate a huge celebration graduating from high school. It was already implied by my mother and father that we were going to graduate from college. Sports wasn't our ticket out of anything. My dad was a laboratory supervisor. We're also one of the few minorities in the state of Louisiana that has a floral license. So we ran a florist. But going to Southern University and make the case right now, why people were asking, why do we still need HBCUs? Here's why we do. Because even though I'm second generation, a lot of these schools that were granted kids, they're first generation, like my dad was. And I grew up in some schools in New Orleans where I didn't get the highest level of education. Just like I'm in St. Louis now. Some school districts are unaccredited. So what happens with these kids? Well, you go to HBCU and you find out they have what's called a junior division when I went to Southern. That junior division allowed me, Maurice, to take remedial classes to get caught up. And when you have people that care like that and understand how to work with people of color, how to work with people from places where it's like Vietnam, we have to really understand some of our kids that we're seeing acting out. Man, they're growing up in trauma. And when you have institutions, Dr. Verrett of Xavier University down in New Orleans, I never forget him saying, he said, always remember, he says, Xavier, we're like this. He says, we go into a community and there are 10 kids, and they tell us 7 of them are the brightest, and that's who you should get. He said, we're going after the 3. Because we know if we get them in this environment, the first thing, every faculty member, every custodian around there, they're going to tell that kid, you can be great. They're going to tell that kid, I don't care what happened, what schools you came from. In this environment, we have an expectation that you're going to rise up. You're going to be pharmacists. My nephew has his doctorate in pharmacist. You're going to be a CPA. My brother's a CPA. I have a degree in accounting. My dad, laboratory supervisor. In the final statement I'll make, Maurice, my dad says all the time, he says, son, it's not what people don't know that hurt them. It's what they do know that's not true. And a lot of people think that there's some discrepancy as it relates to the level of education compared to our predominantly big institutions, and it's not. If you do an audit, and you'll find out influences all over the world from our HBCU schools.
Ladies and gentlemen, the first Aeneas Williams Award will be presented this coming February 2023, right next to the legendary Jim Thorpe Award. This is Pro Football Hall of Famer Aeneas Williams. Reporting for CBS Sports Radio 105.3, this is Maurice Prince.
Thank you. It's an honor. Great questions, too.